Hello and welcome everybody, my name's Chris. Today I'm going to review the Spira S-420 BK. Enjoy! Thank you so much for tuning in and welcome back to the channel. Now, like I said at the beginning, this is a review of the Spira S-420 BK, and I want to take a second here to thank iMusic Network, the German distributor of Spira Guitars, for sponsoring this video. So yes, this is indeed a sponsored review. You're therefore allowed to take the review with a grain of salt. However, I'm going to be super open about everything, and I'm going to let you know what I really enjoyed about the guitar and what I think could be a bit better. So before we go into all the specs and how the guitar sounds and feels, I want to quickly just talk about Spira in general, because it wasn't that long ago where I didn't even know that Spira as a company existed. Who I did know existed was Jet Guitars, and Spira are pretty much Jet Guitars, you know, edgier metal gothic brother, because they belong to the same team of people who built these guitars. So yes, where Jet gives you more of the classic shapes and guitar styles with sometimes vintage specs, sometimes modern specs, Spira goes all out metal. You have headless guitars, you have the X styles, you have V styles, locking trems, extended range, you know, everything that makes a metalhead's heart beat twice as fast. The team behind Jet and Spira also have a third company called Patina Guitars, which goes completely classic vintage shapes and vintage specs, and the stuff is beautiful. So yeah, go take a look at their website and I'm sure there's something for you on there. With that being said, let's talk about the S-420. I'm going to put the specs that I've taken from the official Spira website on the screen right now so you can take a closer look. Now let's go over the setup of the guitar. You have your tone, you have your volume, three-way blade switch, two humbuckers, which are called the villain humbuckers, and that's pretty awesome. Your locking trem, let's flip this over. Regular non-locking tuners, which are completely fine. I said this in so many other guitar reviews which weren't sponsored. I really don't care a lot about locking tuners, so these are great. I can spoil that already. You have a bolt-on construction, and that's pretty much it. So right off the bat, and I'm going to talk about this more in a second, this guitar leaves loads of possibilities for modding, and I think that is what many players will do. But like I said, we'll talk about it more a bit later in the video. So going back to the tone and the volume knob, there's not really much to say about them. It's just, you know, your basic stuff. They aren't super quick, they aren't super slow. It's just, you know, it's a tone and a volume knob. I said this in loads of other reviews. The tone knob for me personally goes out eventually. Maybe I'm going to replace the pickups in the future and then the tone knob will go and never return. But yeah, for a basic setup, it's good like that. Three-way blade switch. It's good. It clicks really into its position, so that's a good thing. It doesn't have any interruptions, it doesn't crackle or whatever. Yeah, it's a good three-way blade switch. And I'm saying this because there are bad ones out there, so this is good. The villain pickups, which again have a great name. These are good, these are fine. You already heard them throughout the video. I'm going to put in more in-depth sound clips in a second. And I said this many times before, I'm an active pickup kind of guy, but these are great. And you know, people who like modding their guitars, the pickups are usually the first things to go. But I'm not going to spend any money on that right now because they sound good. And you're going to hear that now again. tuners are non-locking, like I said earlier. They have the little Spira logo on here, which is super cool. Again, I don't need to have locking tuners. As long as these run smooth and, you know, hold the tuning, I'm good with them. And they do exactly that. So, yeah, these are good. Also, look at this roasted maple neck. Like, how cool is that? It's gorgeous. The headstock, as you can see, is a reverse headstock. So that means that the tuners are on the right side down here. And I think this looks super cool. I'm usually not very particular when it comes to headstock shapes. I have my preferences, yeah, but you know, it's a headstock. But I know a couple of people who are very, very particular about the headstock shape, and they already said to me that they thought this looked amazing. So yeah, I think Spira did a great job with this. Very modern, you know, with the big logo and everything. It looks fantastic. So yeah, a lot of plus points for just, you know, design choice. The bolt-on construction on here, as you can see, is the more modern one, you know, the rounded one. I really don't enjoy the vintage classic square-shaped ones. I know some people do. Not for me. So this is great. It gives you better fret access. You know, it looks nice. It feels nice. So I'm a fan of this. While we're on the topic of fret access, which is for us shreddy folk, of course, a very important aspect of a guitar, you can reach the 24th fret like this without any issue, as you can see. That being said, I think what would make this even better would be, I'm not sure how to say this, but, you know, carve the body in just a tiny bit here to give you even better access. Like I said, can reach this without any issue with every finger if you want to. But yeah, that would be maybe the tiniest bit that I would improve when it comes to fret access. Now let's talk about the neck, which is arguably one of the more important parts of the guitar, you know, when it comes to feeling and playability. How does it compare to, you know, your regular shred neck? I was actually surprised to find, and that is not a criticism, that the neck is thicker than I thought it would be. There's more to grab. There's a little bit more width. There's more in your hand. Because the first thing when you have your shred guitar and you think about shreddy guitars in general is, of course, how does it compare to your very, very typical, very thin wizard necks or whatever. This one, for me personally, compares more to an ESP kind of neck, which are thicker as well. Not LTDs, E2s and upwards. So you have to keep that in mind should you consider buying this guitar. You know, people's hands are very different, and some people they not only prefer flatter necks, but they kind of need it for them to feel comfortable. So yeah, maybe this wouldn't be the perfect choice. However, if you enjoy the feeling of, you know, a thicker neck, of something like an ESP kind of neck, this one is amazing, and I'm not exaggerating here, it really feels that good. So yes, I do enjoy playing this neck, even though I would usually go for thinner ones. But Spira did a great job with this. Same goes for the fret ends, by the way. These are meticulous. So there's nothing scratchy here. It's just good craftsmanship. Alright, now let's talk about the locking trem in here, which is of course always a very interesting topic when it comes to guitars that, you know, they aren't entry level, but they're also not your $2.5 grand kind of high-spec instruments. According to the specs, this trem was made by a Korean company called Sung-il, and I hope that pronunciation was correct. I hadn't heard of them before, but apparently they have been around for decades. The thing with locking trems that aren't, you know, one of the high-end models of one of the big players is that they need a bit of extra care and extra maintenance. You know, with every locking trem, doesn't matter if it's lower tier or higher tier, at first you need a good setup, and then you need a good set of strings that has been properly stretched in and isn't too old as well. So yeah, you can mess up at multiple stages when you set up your trem. This works fine, and it will stay in tune if you don't abuse it and, you know, go crazy with it for 90 minutes. If you're heavily relying on, you know, Floyd Rose playing styles, so dive bombs and flutters and all that good stuff, and I'm a big fan of all that, then I would suggest to swap this out for your preferred trem of choice. And it doesn't matter if it's a Schala, if it's a Godo, if it's a Floyd Rose, or if it's an Edge. You know, there's a reason why these high-end trems are that expensive and why people pay good money for them. I heard people complain about their Floyd 1000s, which I never had an issue with at all. I said this in so many reviews. Floyd 1000s have been working great for me, but I read so many times that some people will not go near them and they prefer still their original Floyd Rose. So yes, if you want to do some serious dive bombing with this, I would suggest swapping it out. So this brings me to the modding part of this video. Is it worth, you know, modifying the instruments by swapping out parts? And I would say 100%. And I could even see, you know, Spira and Jet and Patina kind of having that in mind for the players already. The guitar itself is really that good. Like I said, the fret edges and everything, you know, this stuff. I'm sure most of you had this experience. You go into a store and you pick up a guitar from maybe a well-known brand, maybe a not so well-known brand. You pick it up, you play it, and you're like, ugh, what the hell? And your hand is scratched up and you're bleeding all over the floor now. And there's nothing like this with this guitar here. The setup is so good, and from what I've heard, many people had that experience with Spira already. So it would make sense to buy something like this and then put in your favorite set of pickups, to put in your favorite locking trem, to, you know, maybe put in locking tuners, all that good stuff. You can go absolutely crazy with it, and the overall playability, which is already super good, will benefit from that. And you know, you will get closer to the sound that you have in your head. This is a great instrument, and all the positive things that I said about it, I absolutely meant. Just like I absolutely meant the 2 improvements that I suggested. You know, maybe a tiny bit of better fret access, and maybe, you know, you could consider swapping the locking trem out for a better, higher end version. This is not only a guitar for people who maybe want to mod a already very good instrument into, you know, a near perfect instrument, but maybe also for players who want to go on stage with a brand or a headstock or a body shape that hasn't been seen a billion times before, which is an absolute valid reason, I'd say. For a good price, you're getting an amazing instrument with like a fantastic neck and fretwork. I really have to stress that. It really is, it feels that nice. And I think what many semi-professionals, professionals, or, you know, session players or gigging musicians will do, and it's what I'm gonna do, you know, bring these as amazing backup guitars. You're gonna mod these a bit, you know, bring them up to your spec standard by, you know, replacing the pickups or the trem system or the tuners or whatever you want to do, and then you have this great backup guitar that maybe will one day become your main guitar because it is that reliable. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the review and the guitar. I'm also going to do a video on a Jet guitar in the future, so stay tuned for that. Thank you, iMusic Network and Spira Guitars. This was great. I've been Chris, and that's that.